The federal government just unleashed a massive crackdown on a foreign terrorist organization known as Tren de Aragua, and its singular mastermind. He ran a global crime empire from a luxury prison compound in Venezuela. Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's swift and it's crystal clear. We are doing a deep dive into the violent, terrifying expansion of this transnational criminal organization, Tren de Aragua, or TDA, as you'll hear it called. And we're also looking at the sweeping federal response that's now underway. Because, you may think you know what a gang looks like, but this is a totally different scale. It's a genuine national security threat that has infiltrated American suburbs. I really want to start with the absurdity at the core of this whole thing. The leader, Hector Guerrero Flores, he's widely known as Nino Guerrero. This guy is the singular mastermind, the dark CEO of the whole operation. Now, try to wrap your head around this. For over a decade, he directed murders, massive drug trafficking, international kidnappings.
All across the Western Hemisphere.
Exactly. And all while living like a king inside a maximum security Venezuelan prison. We're talking about the Tocaron prison. It was less like a jail and, more like a corporate headquarters with amenities.
Right. He had a swimming pool, private guards, high-speed internet.
And even an on-site nightclub. From this luxury suite, he commanded a crime syndicate that is now classified as a foreign terrorist organization. So because TDA successfully exploited, border instability to get into the U.S., the Justice Department basically decided to drop the hammer. They announced this massive coordinated strike, indicting over 70 individuals in just one sweep.
And that was across 5 states, right?
5 states: New York, Nebraska, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. And they're targeting not just the street crews, but their whole financial and command structure. Okay, so let's unpack this. We need to understand how a small South American prison gang got powerful enough to steal millions from U.S. banks and wage what federal officials are explicitly calling asymmetric warfare on our communities.
Well, what's so fascinating here is the speed and the sophistication of their growth. It's what forced this massive federal reaction. U.S. authorities define TDA as a ruthless, highly organized, and rapidly expanding transnational criminal enterprise. It started as just a protection racket inside that prison, Tocaron, back in the mid-2000s. But it just metastasized. It grew into an organization that can rival the largest cartels. And that aggressive response you mentioned, you can really see it in the statistics. To give you a real sense of the severity here, the U.S. government has federally indicted over 260 TDA members just since January of 2025.
260.
Right. And when the government brings down hundreds of federal charges in a single year against just one group, it confirms they're treating this as a national security emergency, not just a series of, isolated crimes.
That distinction, national security versus local crime, that is exactly what makes Nino Guerrero so dangerous. He's this singular mastermind. He turned TDA into a multinational franchise.
And he's still at large.
Still at large. The State Department has a $5 million reward on his head, which means he is still out there actively running this global operation. Let's just dwell on that prison, Tocaron, for a second. For years, it was his corporate headquarters. The sources show he maintained just total command and control because the state in Venezuela was either too weak or, let's be honest, probably too corrupt to stop him.
He was running the whole show from his cell.
The whole show. Managing logistics, executing orders across North, South, Central America, even into Europe, all from his personal luxury compound inside what was supposed to be a maximum security prison.
It's a complete failure of the Venezuelan state.
And that corporate analogy is incredibly accurate, especially when you look at how they make money.
Yes, their revenue model. Unlike, disorganized street gangs, TDA runs on a strict, centralized tribute system. Subordinates, and it doesn't matter if they're in Santiago or Denver, they have to pay CASA.
And what is CASA exactly?
CASA is basically a mandatory, non-negotiable income fee.
Like a tax.
It's essentially a tax on all criminal proceeds. So by centralizing that payment, and we're talking revenue from drugs, extortion, sex trafficking, money laundering, Guerrero Flores made himself the ultimate CEO. And that structure is exactly what lets federal prosecutors target him under ICO.
The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act?
Exactly. It means they can prosecute him for thousands of crimes he never personally touched just because he was the leader of the enterprise.
And if we connect that centralized structure to the bigger geopolitical landscape, it shows he's doing more than just running a racket. The indictments explicitly accuse him of facilitating the transport of, and I'm quoting, tons of cocaine from Venezuela and Colombia straight into the U.S.
Absolutely. The DEA has been very clear. that he actively collaborates with established narco-state cartels, FARC, ELN, even the high-level Cartel de los Soles. This collaboration means TDA is a key player in a network designed to just flood the U.S. market with cocaine and, increasingly deadly synthetic opioids like fentanyl. It's not just about profit.
It's about undermining regional stability.
And this is where that national security angle really comes into focus with the term asymmetric warfare. Guerrero Flores directly exploited one of the greatest humanitarian crises in recent history, the mass Venezuelan migration. The source material says he actively recruited from the 7.7 million Venezuelans fleeing economic turmoil to expand TDA's ranks across Latin America and, critically, into the United States.
Hold on, how is recruiting from a migrant population considered asymmetric warfare? Isn't that just exploiting a vulnerable group for labor?
The administration is framing it as a geopolitical tactic. By leveraging the chaos, the movement of millions of people, they can rapidly inject these highly trained, extremely violent criminal operators directly into U.S. cities.
Using the sheer volume of migrants as cover.
Exactly. The administration sees this as, quite literally, using mass migration as a hostile strategy to destabilize American communities and government infrastructure. They're weaponizing human misery to expand their terror operations. That intent is what elevates it from crime to national security.
That puts the whole federal response into context. Okay, let's shift gears and look at the corporate portfolio this dark CEO manages. This is where it gets really detailed. It shows just how diversified this illegal conglomerate is.
They really do have a security division for violence and a sophisticated IT department for crime.
Let's start with the financial attack because it shows their sophistication. In Nebraska, 54 individuals were indicted for a huge conspiracy involving ATM jackpotting.
And this is a smash and grab. This is a complex, high-tech operation.
Exactly. When we talk about jackpotting, we mean hackers, often directed remotely, who use specialized malware to infect ATMs. They basically force the machine to empty its cash reserves on command.
It turns the ATM into a rogue slot machine.
That's a great way to put it. The investigation found TDA used this to siphon millions in cash from U.S. financial institutions. It's a highly organized form of financial terrorism that hits the heart of our banking system. And their portfolio, it moves from high-tech to horrifyingly brutal violence so quickly. Look at the charges in the western states. It just shows their total lack of fear on U.S. soil.
The violence is medieval. In New Mexico, 11 alleged members were charged with racketeering for kidnapping a victim, brutally strangling him in an Albuquerque apartment, and then burying the body in a remote desert grave.
Just to cover their tracks.
And that extreme violence is a tactic. It's how they signal control and enforce silence.
That level of calculated brutality it's deeply unsettling. And then in Denver, Colorado, the charges show the level of remote command he maintained. Gang leaders operating remotely allegedly directed the abduction of a man to extort $30,000 from his family.
And the Colorado case is particularly chilling because of what happened when the payment failed.
Right.
The remote commanders, likely getting orders from South America, allegedly ordered the victim's finger to be removed as punishment and leverage.
The victim escaped, thankfully.
Yes, he did. But it shows TDA is directing these acts of extreme bodily harm on U.S. citizens, and the leaders never have to step foot in the country. They are acting as a foreign terrorist entity inside our borders.
And if we look at the logistics fueling all this, their entire network is built on illegal trafficking. We see three main, incredibly destructive streams: drugs, humans, and weapons.
On the drug front, yeah, they're facilitating those tons of cocaine, but they're also deep into the synthetic market. Authorities have seized 2C or pink cocaine and, critically, huge amounts of fentanyl. The source material confirms these shipments are now being intercepted along maritime borders, which suggests they're adapting their routes under pressure.
Then there's the human front.
Right. They ruthlessly exploit vulnerable migrants. A huge sex and human trafficking operation was just targeted in a raid in San Antonio, Texas. Law enforcement there detained over 140 immigrants being exploited by TDA. This cycle of violence is core to their business.
And intelligence suggests they're also trafficking arms to support their expansion plans, making sure their footprint is backed by firepower. The infiltration numbers are just staggering.
It reinforces that open border instability is their primary lifeline.
The administration reported that since January 2025, they've arrested 3,500 known members of TDA in the U.S.
3,500.
That number alone just shows the shocking scale of their domestic presence and why this focused action is so necessary.
And it's important to note, those are known members. The actual number is likely much higher. The government needed an aggressive, centralized strategy for this decentralized threat. Which brings us to Operation Vulcan.
Okay, so what does this all mean? The federal response is this massive whole-of-government offensive, Operation Vulcan. The Attorney General has stated the mission is the total elimination of TDA.
The key shift here is centralization. The DOJ took Joint Task Force Vulcan, which used to go after gangs like MS-13, and expanded its mandate. It's now a unified national front, combining the FBI, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and it's designed to bypass local hurdles and attack PDA's command structure directly.
Oh.
They're not just locking up foot soldiers, they're using RICO to target the dark CEO and dismantle the whole enterprise from the top down.
The legal firepower they're bringing is, frankly, historic. Beyond just classifying TDA as a foreign terrorist organization, which is huge, the administration is invoking a legal tool almost as old as the country itself. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798. This is fascinating. Why dust off a 227-year-old law for this?
The sources are clear. They're using it as a strategic weapon. By classifying TDA as a hostile proxy of the Venezuelan government, they fundamentally change the legal status of the members they catch.
A state-sponsored threat, essentially.
Precisely. Invoking the AEA allows them to streamline the expeditious removal of these criminal aliens, bypassing the standard judicial appeals and bureaucracy that can take years. It allows for immediate removal of the threat.
So they're cutting the legal Gordian knot.
And this aggressive strategy is producing verifiable kinetic results, especially at the border. DHS and the military are conducting targeted kinetic strikes against drug boats on maritime routes. And we have the stats to back it up. This focus on intercepting supply lines has had a dramatic impact. Fentanyl trafficking through the border has demonstrably dropped 54%.
54%.
That's a measurable consequence of viewing this through a national security lens. It's saving American lives.
And the message of deterrence is being delivered through action. We saw the arrests, now we're seeing the removals.
Exactly. The administration has removed a total of 2,329 Venezuelan nationals from the U.S. They're using resumed deportation flights to Venezuela and, critically, transferring dangerous detainees to places like the terrorist confinement center in El Salvador. The message to TDA leadership is direct and unmistakable. We will find your operators, we will arrest them, and we will send them to facilities where they cannot operate.
That is a clear, decisive message of accountability. To summarize the core insight here, we've moved past treating TDA as a local street problem. It's now being systematically dismantled as a transnational enterprise. A dark CEO whose global franchise of violence and trafficking is finally meeting the full force of federal power.
And the sources clearly show that TDA thrived by exploiting instability, specifically the weaponized nature of mass migration from Venezuela. Given the administration's success here, cutting off supply lines, making arrests, and streamlining deportations using tools like the FTO designation and the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, it raises a really important question for you to consider. If labeling TDA as a hostile proxy and invoking this historic law proves this effective, does this strategic playbook become the new standard for dealing with other violent cartels exploiting our borders?